I have a few slides. I'm not going to take up much time because most of this we want to be about culmination. I'll give you guys a quick agenda. So you probably don't know me. My name is Ben. I work at SMBX. I lead BD and have had the pleasure of working with Culmination over the last few months. I will give you a quick walkthrough here of how SMBX works. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a walkthrough, or Tom is just going to kind of talk about culmination, impact of COVID, things, pieces of why folks should be excited to invest, kind of what their vision is and what their plans are for the future. We will do our best to try and hold questions to the end if you can. If you have something burning or you feel like you're going to forget it, don't worry about it. Feel free to throw it in the chat, and then I'll figure out kind of ways to fit those questions in. Probably we'll try and resolve most of them at the end. We're going to try and keep this short. I'll only talk for about 5 minutes, and then we'll hand over and have about 10 minutes at the end for questions. So let me introduce to you, can everybody see this? Looks good, I hope. SMBX. SMBX exists for a few reasons. One of which is to make small business investing easy. The way we really like to start this conversation is to talk about how banks work, right? So folks like those of you on the call, folks like me, we keep our money in a bank. The bank lends out our money, right, to small businesses such as Culmination Brewing. Small businesses pay that back to banks with interest, right? There's no such thing as free money. And then the bank makes a bunch of money off of that. We thought that there was a better way, given that it was our money being lent out, given that we had no choice over who banks was lending our money to, whether that was going to businesses we love like Culmination or maybe Arctic Drilling, or oil and gas. Not that we have anything against oil and gas, but you might not want your money invested there. So we thought there was a better way to kind of build a new financial system that put small businesses front and center. And so we developed, we hope you know, this idea of a small business bond. So the idea is that members of the community, folks like you listening here, buy a small business bond, and that money goes directly to a small business. And then the small business pays back the principal, the bond, plus interest. And instead of the bank profiting, right, the people profit. The people earn that interest. So that's the gist. There's no complex equity agreement or ownership in the business. It's a simple idea of you give me $10, I'm going to give you $11.60 back, or whatever that is. So here's just a quick example of another somebody else on our site now. But you go to the SMBX app or website, you can view an offering. It's got a bunch of details here about the business. At the bottom of that page or in the documents section, you can see detailed information about issuer financial information, the bond prospectus, which is like this 34-page document that outlines everything about the investment opportunity, from risks to profit and loss to everything in between. And then a summary if you'd rather read 2 pages instead of a big 34-page document. When you make a bond purchase, you hit this buy button kind of at the bottom there. You see that yellow button, and it'll help you calculate your return. For an example with this one with Dilla, you put in $1,000, you get paid back $1,000, which would equate to a monthly payment of about $20. So if you're considering investing in Culmination, you make an investment. What will happen is every month you'll get paid back, right? Principal plus interest, until you make your money plus interest at the end of that payment after, I believe ours are 7 years. Quick download here on the portfolio page. So as you can see here, you see this is actually a woman by the name of Amanda, her account. So, she's put in $2,500 so far. She's made about $225 back. You can see kind of those individual bond payments and how many you have left. So, some are $4, some are $1. And then, purchases are in there as well. And then lastly, Last piece I like to talk about is if your monthly payment is over $10, that's when you can withdraw it. So $10 is kind of our magic number. That's how much bonds cost to purchase. In addition, that's how much you can withdraw. You can draw, 11 or 12 or some set of cents, but you have to have a minimum of $10 to pull that out. Or you can take that and every month reinvest it. And we all know what Einstein said. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those who know it earn it. Those who don't pay it. So we encourage everybody here to be earning that compound interest, reinvest into other small businesses after you make your investment in Culmination. Last thing that I'll mention is maybe you're like, I don't need the money. I'm rich. I'm happy. I like where my money's at. But we just launched a new feature at SMBX where you can gift small business investments. So if you have a friend who absolutely loves Culmination, there's no better gift than giving them an investment in Culmination and them getting paid back every month. We like to say, give the gift that keeps on giving, both from the community and the wallet. If you're interested in that, go.thesmbx.com/gift, and you can gift a small business investment to family or friends. If they're accredited. That's all I have. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to hand it over to the man of the 45 minutes because it's not a full hour. And why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of Culmination? What are you guys up to? What do you got planned for 2021? And hand over to you.
Oh, well, thanks, Ben. And thank you everyone for joining. So 2021, like we definitely plan on putting 2020 behind us and moving forward with the bigger and the better things. 2020 started great. We won best mid-sized brewery in Oregon in January. February, we started hearing some whispers of the pandemic that was to come, and then as you all know, March and on was just our new reality that we're wading through. Breweries like ours were especially hit hard. And when I say breweries like ours, I mean breweries that specialized in draft. So our wholesale was, at the time of the pandemic hitting, 70% keg sales and 30% can sales. And then our retail sales up front also accounted for almost 60% of our overall revenue because our tap room was incredibly popular. So pre-pandemic, we were already planning our growth plan and our expansion, which included a new kitchen, expanding our tap room, putting in a can line, putting in some larger tanks, and moving into grocery, which would have then, like the grocery aspect, which is cans these days in craft beverage, would have moved that needle from 70% draft to probably closer to 70% cans, with a giant jump in overall production via wholesale. So the pandemic not only caused us to have to take a hard stop and take a look at who we are as a company, like who we are as a citizen, and what we want to do, but it forced us to immediately pivot to cans. So we paused for a minute. We took a look at our mission statement, which emphasizes community, emphasizes family, emphasizes friends. And we decided to, when we were allowed to reopen, we launched a small business spotlight that my wife, April, who was also on here, spearheaded, bringing in other small businesses that were trying to make our way through this crazy year, doing some interesting collaborations, reaching out that way. But in regards to the production of Culmination, it forced us to basically abandon draft and move into cans. And that brought us to needing to source our own can line, because our can sales, or were like a giant bump, like, and the revenue was good, but the margin on that revenue was not great because we're paying a good 30% of margin to Craft Canning, which is the mobile can line company. In order to make our company more sustainable and position ourselves for long-term growth, we need to bring in a can line to recapture that margin and give ourselves the flexibility to be canning multiple batches every day. So when I met Ben and SMBX, it made a lot of sense because it both like fit into our ethos of our commitment to community, bypassing a bank, which is like kind of like a faceless monolith, which doesn't necessarily involve the community, as like to Ben's point earlier, like they also are using the communal funds to finance Arctic drilling, for example. So like this relationship through SMBX is like a handshake with the community and with our customers and with our fans, like people that, going back to our mission statement, that's what we're about, like our friends and our family, people we can gather around a table and have a beer with. Like it's really meaningful for me and our company to be able to create our growth plan around like our customers and our community. So Ben, thank you for that, and everyone attending, like thank you for like being here and potentially being part of this new adventure.
Yeah. That is an incredible intro. I'm sold already. Do you want to talk maybe a little bit about some of the things you're doing in Japan, some of the things that make Culmination unique? I have a few other follow-up questions there, but we'll start there. A few that were sent kind of from folks prior to the webinar.
Sure. So we've had a kinship with Japan going back a few years. And in fact, when I launched Culmination, even the original logo was intentionally made to be reminiscent of the Japanese sun, because we wanted to do sake right away. And like just making the beer took so much of our bandwidth that the sake kept getting put on the back burner. But those connections I made in taking like, the sake education classes and making friends with the Japanese community here in Portland, we became a popular brewery on the radar of Japan. And Japan is in love with Portland and in love with craft beer right now. So this combination of the fact that we positioned ourselves in this company with our unique brew deck, able to brew a lot of one-off beers, and our emphasis on quality, which also resonates with the Japanese, and our intentional attention that we pay to the Japanese, going over there, meeting people, like shaking hands, like meeting the owners of the beer bars, like telling them that we love your culture and we love your food. We've become the most popular craft brewery in the United States in Japan, and this is something that we feel very honored about, and we've also tried to nurture over these last few years. So last September, I spent all of September in Japan helping these young craft breweries that are getting up and running, like online, like helping them with their SOPs and the recipes. And that led to a lot of like deep connections where Culmination will be opening a brewery in Takamatsu, which is a large island off of Osaka. And the intention is to launch a Takamatsu singular SKU brand, which will just be like a beautiful Pilsner. And then we'll brew Culmination brands, so we can have our product that are more fresh, a product that doesn't have to languish in customs. Mm-hmm. And we'll also open up to be like a contract brewery for small businesses over there who are also affected by the pandemic, who need to pivot into cans, but who lack the ability to either bring in a can line or lack the institutional infrastructure to bring in mobile canning.
Sounds awesome. Sounds very exciting. I'm sure you're ready for the pandemic to end and get over to Japan and get that started. Although I guess it is kind of already in progress.
Yeah, I miss ramen.
Yeah, right. Most importantly, the ramen is there. Let me ask you, this is a question that was sent in before from Patrick, who I'm not sure. Oh, Patrick is on. So this is from him. So what is a subcategory or niche in the world of beer in which culmination is or could be the main game in town? So the examples that Patrick provided were Anchor Brewing is synonymous with the open vat fermented style known as steam beer. Guinness, we all know as being synonymous with Irish stout. What's your kind of vision? And maybe it's like, I think what you were saying earlier, like you guys are kind of just one-offs, right? Like new flavor here, kind of where things kind of pull you. Talk us through a little bit about where you see yourself kind of sitting in this world, especially within Portland, which is such a competitive like brewery town. I feel like SF is all apps. Portland is like breweries and small business. So what's up?
Well, I don't think we're entirely one-offs. We definitely have our flagship line, but our hot side, and when I say hot side, it's where the beer is built before it's fermented, and you move from the hot side to the cold side, where you'll ferment. The cold side can be larger format. The hot side is where you turn the grain into what's known as wort. We have the most unique and most flexible hot side in Portland, if not in the United States. Most small craft breweries have what's called a 2-vessel hot side. So your mash tun is your loiter tun, and your kettle is your whirlpool. And forgive me if I use these terms quickly, but it limits you to a singular SKU on in a singular labor day footprint. But what we did was we broke out all of those functions into separate vessels. So our hot side is like this ridiculously long gravity fed platform that we could hold a dance party on. It's so big. But we have 2 mash tuns. We've got a separate loiter tun. We have a separate kettle and a separate whirlpool, a hot liquor tank, cold liquor tank. So what that does is it gives us the ability to do small batches, because the overall format, if I say I have a 5-barrel hot side, would normally be ridiculously small for any sort of meaningful wholesale that would go out into like grocery. But by making it a 5-vessel 5-barrel hot side, like we can run 3 to 4 beers simultaneously in the same labor footprint. So it gives us the flexibility to do both economy of scale into large format cold side tanks, and it keeps us relevant in that the new age of craft beer is customers always looking for something new.
Mm-hmm.
So we can fill our 30-barrel tanks with Phaedrus, our flagship IPA, but we can also fill a 5 or 10-barrel tank with the Peak, and that keeps us that keeps the income stream coming from wholesale moving into grocery, but it also keeps us being like a brewery on the forefront of innovation,
Mm-hmm.
being able to turn these smaller format tanks because of the way we've designed our brewery.
Got it. So correct me if I'm wrong here, and I'm not in the brewery industry as well as you are. Like, is it fair to say that because of the way that you've designed your system, you guys can mass produce for this canning line in a way that's going to allow you to scale out your flagship to, the moon and beyond, while simultaneously continuing to be able to experiment and do small batches? And what's unique about Culmination is the ability to do both. Normally, is it fair to say normally breweries are kind of built for one or the other?
Yes, and in fact, going back to our discussions about Japan. One, when I was in Japan last year, I was in a symposium. One of the questions posed was, "Are flagship beers dead?" And like the answer is yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
They are they're dead in the realm of generating excitement for craft breweries,
Yeah.
but they're not dead in the fact that they're still a relevant income stream for breweries that have product in the grocery.
Right.
So like what we've positioned ourselves is to be able to do both. But so far we've held off moving into grocery, even though we've had overtures from our distributor to move into grocery. Like we've intentionally held off because our growth plan was get a can line, up our production, move into grocery.
Yep.
So once we have a can line and a couple more large format tanks, we can use the flexibility of our hot side to move our flagship beers in our large format tanks to grocery, but keep the flexibility of our hot side to our small format tanks to keep 25 beers on our tap list.
Yep.
And also keep the local craft tap rooms excited about us.
Cool. So is it fair to say, and for those of you who don't know, we're talking about the can line a lot because the goal is to raise this capital to purchase one.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read any of the Instagram posts or emails or anything else, now you know better for it. Question about that. Is your grocery strategy regional? Is it national, international? And then can you talk a little bit about how far that can line will get you in terms of, as you think about that grocery strategy, as you think about kind of where that can line's going to take you? Seems like it's the one missing piece. So like you stick that in, and then does that say, okay, now we can, produce as much as we can. We keep it going 24/7 is probably, not quite there. But walk us through a little bit of that.
It's a great question, and thank you, Mark Smith, for posing that. I just saw that pop up too. So our grocery strategy initially is very regional, with the potential of national. Although the ability of a relatively small craft brewery to move nationally has diminished significantly by the amount of regional SKUs that are entering our national craft sphere.
Got
So
it.
what we want to do is enter grocery regionally in the greater Portland market. Our second avenue of growth, once we get past this pandemic, is to open our own tap rooms, so we would be distributing to ourselves, kind of drawing back from what might have been the best avenue of growth 9 years ago would be to go regional to national, whereas now it's regional to like, let's get some tap rooms and distribute to ourselves. We take on a little extra infrastructure there, but we maximize our margin and maximize our own revenue. Mm-hmm. International is a really interesting part of that question, because what I'm doing internationally will be setting up companies like in Japan and in Vietnam. I have a project that I'm helping with where we'll be brewing Culmination, and it'll be like a royalty structure.
Yeah.
So like 3% of all Culmination brewed there will move directly back to Culmination Portland, which is like the mothership, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Like cash flow will have to be in the brewery in Takamatsu or the brewery in Da Nang, but like because like it's using a brand that I built in Portland, we'll get a royalty, which will be like passive income, which will be great.
Right. Awesome. Speaking of international, another question that just kind of came in, and if you guys have questions, feel free to start throwing them in. We'll kind of start to work those into our conversation here. Do you have a sense, like what percentage today of your sales are international? Is it 10, 20? I assume it's not 20 because you were kind of showing the breakdown, mostly kegs previously. So where's that at today?
We're from Our Portland location, we are shipping a fairly significant amount to Japan, but still maybe barely touching 10% of what we do. We just started a relationship with a distributor in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we created this artwork of the peak to be like Hong Kong inspired. So we now have a craft presence in Hong Kong, which we hope to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how that relationship evolves, the brewery that I helped set up in Hong Kong is a large format brewery. So at some point, it might make more sense to brew large format in Hong Kong for Hong Kong and move to the royalty versus brewing in Portland for Hong Kong and take the direct revenue.
Gotcha. Okay. Follow-up question there. Well, not really follow-up, but coming from Nicholas, it can be tough to compete for shelf space in US stores. Can you share your plans, good news, challenges regarding that kind of competition there? Why did your distributor approach you about shelf space? Walk us through, beyond obviously fabulous beer that sells well with amazing design. What's the secret sauce there?
So distributors they have their portfolios, and we're with Columbia, and it can be a challenge with a distributor as large as Columbia to stay in their forefront. But when Columbia absorbed General Distribution, which is the company that we initially signed with, they called us and said that they wanted us to be one of their featured craft brands. So the aspirations that Columbia had for us had to mesh with our ability to supply.
Mhm.
The worst thing you can do as a supplier is to not have product. So we didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So Columbia's been trying to throttle us harder than we've been able to throttle. And this is a conversation we've been having for almost 2 years now since they have absorbed General. So the getting a can line is our ability to throttle. Columbia will move us into grocery, and we can have an infrastructure in our own facility that'll make sense for us to like up our capacity and up our product output.
That's a really good point, and I think we were talking about this before folks hopped on, and I want to kind of come back and touch on it. You guys, obviously, you're drinking out of a can now, right? So can you talk a little bit about, you guys are obviously producing cans today. Maybe talk a little bit about the difference between bringing in a canning line, every so often to produce for you guys versus having it on your own. What does that allow you to do? And like, why is that important both to the bottom line of the business? I think everybody here can probably tie it directly to what you were just talking about in terms of upping production and distribution, but maybe, tie that to the bottom line of the business, and why is that a critical piece for kind of this plan for 2021 and beyond?
It gives us both flexibility and cash flow add back. So like right now we have to sometimes sandbag our cold side, and the cold side is our fermenters and our brights, in order to keep beer ready for bi-weekly mobile canning coming in to can our product.
Which is expensive too, right? Bringing in that mobile canning line is I would assume a pretty penny.
So it has the dual effect of both having us like waste production days by having ready product sitting in a bright tank waiting for craft canning to come in, and also taking a large chunk of our margin. So if we have our own can line, we recapture that margin, and we can more efficiently use our tank farm.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll only take a few hours to CIP a can line, fire it up, and move 15 barrels through, and then we have that tank free,
right,
on a Tuesday, and then we can move product through that's sitting in a fermenter to that bright tank Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Whereas like currently, like we have craft canning in every other Friday, so the beer that's sitting in the bright tank waiting for craft canning is like needs to reside in that bright tank.
So I'm going to paraphrase here again for folks who maybe not be as familiar with the brewery industry. So it not only adds to the bottom line of just it's expensive to bring in the canning line, but also it frees up your supply chain. Because right now you've got beer that's ready to be sold or essentially there, you can't put it in a keg and ship it out like you used to. So it's sitting in one of these big tanks. You have a canning line. As soon as that stuff's ready to can, boom, it's out and you're able to produce more. Is that fair?
Totally. It's like bringing in a large part of like your infrastructure into your being,
Yeah.
like constantly having to like have this conversation with another entity.
Cool. Any other questions from the crowd? We'll keep kind of going here. John Myers says, thanks, gotta go. I'm glad to have the opportunity to invest in a local business I believe in. We're glad for you too, John.
Well, thanks,
Thanks
John.
for
Cheers.
joining us. Here's one more coming in. Big, long time and Culmination fan. Love your explanation of your small performance tank plan. Anyway, can you explain why 2018, 2019 financials are not to be considered typical? Can you speak to net profitability numbers from the time and why cash flow was portrayed kind of differently between those 2 years? And maybe the easier way to, you can either take a stab there, like kind of walk us through maybe 2018, 2019, and Nick, we're happy to provide maybe a more detailed explanation in text after.
2018, 2019, we were moving from startup to established business. So in every startup, we started producing in 2014. Every startup I do, and like I've started up a lot of breweries around the U.S. and globally. We anticipate 3 years of some kind of burn rate. Like you never get to break even immediately. You've got to have operating capital. There was an additional layer of complexity in that realm of years for craft brewing here in the U.S., where almost every brewery that was starting up made their initial forecast based on the 22-ounce bottle model. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question specifically, but I'm just explaining to you like a challenge that we had that every brewery in startup had in the U.S. So we put our financial projections in a 22-ounce bottle profitability realm, whereas we had to move to cans fairly quickly. And I talk about a pivot to cans now with the pandemic, but there was also a pivot to cans when the 22-ounce bottle became irrelevant, which was like a year and a half before the pandemic. It's when I think enough craft breweries had entered the shelf space with cans. And at some point, there was this paradigm shift with the customer where they realized that spending $5 for a singular 22-ounce bottle made less sense than spending $10.50 on a six-pack of cans. So like we started in 2014, our sales were like hitting the trajectories that we projected with 22-ounce bottles, and then like bam, like we had to like move to cans, which everyone did. And it's great because I prefer the can format, but it's definitely like part of who we are. It's part of our cash flow. It's part of our P&L history, and that's right around the 2018-ish mark.
Got it.
Yeah, and we have all that like we want to be as transparent as possible, so we have all that data available as well.
Gotcha. Cool. Great answer. I personally think we'll see if Nick has anything coming back to that. Here's another question coming in here. Just curious, and I may butcher this pronunciation. Is your Da Nang collaboration with Seven Bridges?
Oh, Da Nang, yeah.
Da Nang. Spent some time in Vietnam last year and was super happy for some of the offerings there, as well as the Heart of Darkness Pasture Street.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thanks, Trevor. So it is not, but I did do some work for the Seven Bridges guys, and we, due to like several circumstances, the pandemic not being like an insignificant one, we've moved on from the group that owns Seven Bridges, but the talent from Seven Bridges and I became like very good friends, and he's now my roommate in Portland because we were going to work with the Seven Bridges group to open a large craft facility in Vietnam, and when that fell apart, like I had already created this relationship with the head brewer there who had brewed enough like brilliant beer to create Seven Bridges as like the preeminent craft brewery in Vietnam. They won best mid-sized brewery in Vietnam the same year Culmination won best mid-sized brewery in Oregon. That project fell apart, but Darren Provenzano ended up moving to Portland, and he's now April and my roommate. And he and I are working on together. We're working on the projects in Japan and also working on a new project in Vietnam with a new set of investors. So there's a lot of fun and inspiring things that we hope will come to fruition in 2021.
Like, yeah.
I have heard of Heart of Darkness. I've been there. Love those guys. Pasteur Street. Love those guys. I can't say enough good things about Vietnam. If anyone has a chance to go there, you should go there. It's beautiful.
We talked about that earlier. That's your favorite. I was saying I wanted to go to South Korea and Japan and Malaysia, and you were like, no, you got to hit up Vietnam.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Cool. So we got about 3 minutes left. We promised we'd keep it short on this Thursday night. So if you guys have any other questions, let's throw them up now. Otherwise, we'll kind of trail off here and let you guys get on about your night and hopefully go out and buy some bonds. Not hopefully, definitely.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Yeah. Final cheers here. My only question is, as one comes in here.
Michigander, Gabrielle. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Ben.
Oh, no, you're
I just
good.
had to see that cheers from a fellow Michigander from Gabrielle Coleman.
Yeah. I got roots in Kalamazoo. I'm not too far away. I'm definitely West Coast.
April from Grand
Rapids. So my question is, when do I get to buy Culmination in California? I gotta drive up. I can't even bring it back on the plane because I don't check a bag. But like,
so, I mean, we're in discussions about that right now. I mean, our priority was to maximize our backyard, which is Portland.
Yep.
The first step in maximizing our backyard is to get into grocery Portland, and then the next step would be to hit the peripheral markets like California, and we need to decide whether we would go through Columbia's extended network or go with a boutique distributor.
Cool. Good. I'm excited. You let me know when. I'll buy you out. I'll do my best. Drink a lot of beer in this house. Actually, we don't, but I drink a lot of beer in this house, I should say. Me and
up and I'll load up your trunk.
We might come up. You don't get those signs up, and we'll be there this weekend. One question coming in anonymously: how soon till we get paid back for bonds? That one probably falls more into my realm. So these are 84 months, right? We're doing a 7-year term here. Yep. So essentially, if you were to invest, when you see that monthly payment, you'd get that for 84 months. Easy enough question. I get the easy ones. You get the hard ones, like what happened in 2018, 2019. I'm like, I'm just going to move over here and grab my charger. Anything else here, folks? Otherwise, we'll sign off here and enjoy your Thursday, enjoy your weekend, and enjoy the holidays. Doesn't look like it.
From Angie, we love Culmination and excited for this. Angie, we love you too. Cheers. Cheers, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Patrick. Cheers, folks.
Thanks, Patrick and Nicholas. Thanks, Ben.
My pleasure.
Yep. Take care, man.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. I'll shoot you a text after or something.
See you guys.
All right. Bye.